Well, first, I wanted to thank the search team for the countless hours they put in and looking at resumes, sorting them out, then doing the Skype interviews with all of us, and then making the arrangements for us to come down. I want to thank the Board of Trustees for reading their criterion as to who to have in as finalists. And I want to thank you. You as a congregation empower your Board of Trustees to form things like the search team. And please realize that neither of these teams, the search team or the board, has had a break now for about 3 weeks. You know, so pray for their stamina going into this week. And as Barry mentioned, or Scott mentioned rather, Carla is also an ordained Unity minister. We went through seminary together. But you'll notice Carla doesn't hear that well, so if you're a fast talker, you might want to slow that down a little bit and be in front of Carla so she can kind of read your lips and the like. But she's looking forward to meeting all of you too, so by all means give Carla a hug, okay? So, let's start with a spiritual group hug. Good morning. When Carla and I did emerge from the seminary in 2002, we got hired by Unity of Hollywood, Florida. And so if any of you have, had that kind of a situation in your life, where we went down there, found a place that we wanted to buy, and of course you need to get a mortgage loan, and the first thing they do is they put the application in front of you. Please list all of your assets. And I'm thinking, as a minister, you think of the word assets a little bit differently than they do. Most people, what's your greatest asset? Well, it's probably my home. That's the worth the most. To me, probably my greatest asset, and for anyone in the Unity movement, is the conscious control of our experiences. We realize, that our thoughts and our beliefs actually create in their kind. So if we've got a lousy attitude towards life, we'll have a lousy experience in life. There was a gentleman who went to his doctor and got the kind of diagnosis that almost everyone dreads, you've got 6 months to live. Oddly enough, since he was not feeling very good about his life, he actually went to a Unity church in New York City. And there, he heard a lesson pretty similar to what you're hearing today, about gratitude. And so as people would commiserate with him, I said, I heard about your diagnosis. That's really tough. What are you going to do? And he'd say, I'm going to start practicing living with a grateful heart. And he took a whole new attitude into his life. And people watched over the next 6 months, and nothing happened. And 10 years later, he was still going strong. Because just by shifting that attitude, shifting that gloomy form of life to a sunshiny kind of life, blue skies like today, things happen. I've heard people refer to it as the attitude of gratitude. And I found that you can take it to a whole new level, an art form. Many people think of gratitude as an obligation. If you invite me over for dinner, you might expect me to invite you back for dinner, or at least you expect me to say thank you. And if I don't say thank you, it's like, what's wrong with this guy? So when people talk about being grateful to God, it's like, well, is God like that? Is God going to say, well, Bob, you didn't thank me, so your life's going to be miserable the rest of the day? No, we don't give thanks to God because God feels it's an obligation. We give thanks because it changes us. It changes our attitude. In the New Testament, in the first letter to the Thessalonians, Paul wrote, "Rejoice always, pray constantly, and give thanks in all circumstances." And I've had people say, well, what are you talking about? I just lost my job this week. I'm supposed to give thanks for that? Or what's your situation? What's your challenge in your life right now? When the brown organic material hits the rotary oscillator, am I supposed to give thanks for that? Well, let's read what he said once again now. What he wrote was, in all things give thanks. There's a very subtle difference there. So when the brown organic material hits the rotary oscillator, rather than saying thank you for this wonderful paint job, you say, oh, wow, I am really grateful that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I know things are going to be better. I know that I'm going to get the divine ideas that I need to get through this because I am a part of something much bigger than myself. There's no need to be more spiritual. We are already spiritual beings having a human experience. We just need to wake up to that. We just need to be conscious of that as much as we can every day. Now, am I totally conscious that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience every moment of my life? No. I have my moments. As I was sharing with with the board yesterday, I have my moments like, God, I didn't sign up for this. But the good news is, like I say, but I do know that we're going to get through this. So once I do express some frustration and ground it, then I can move forward with that attitude, okay, I'm going to give thanks in all things. Because whatever we focus on expands. So that's why you don't want to focus on the problem. You want to just focus on the fact that we're spiritually connected and that we can get through this. So that's when I mentioned taking it to a new art form. This is the art of gratitude. Recognizing that gratitude may be different than Thanksgiving. It's, here we've got Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday, and I've often heard it called the only secular holiday, the only non-religious holiday. And I would submit to you that Thanksgiving is the most spiritual holiday. Because if we can truly be grateful in all circumstances, then we're going to be seeing and feeling and experiencing spiritual experiences. 2,500 years ago, Plato wrote, a grateful mind becomes a great mind. A great mind attracts to itself great things. A British couple was visiting New York City, and their vision or image of New York City was from all of the police procedural TV programs, that they saw. I know me growing up in Chicago, Carla grew up in Kansas. We go down to visit in Kansas. Like, you live in Chicago? And of course, Hill Street Blues and TV shows like that, you're kind of like, my God, how could you possibly live in Chicago? So this couple, the host was very wise. Instead, when they arrived and they talked about their concerns, he took them to the top of the Empire State Building for about an hour or two and allowed them to see the beauty and to see a tranquility, over the city that they were somewhat reticent about visiting. And in a lot of the Bible passages, especially in the Old Testament, you hear them talk about going up to the mountaintop. It's symbolic. It means go up to a higher place. And I heard people say, what's the 30,000 foot on this? The idea of if you were looking at the situation 30,000 feet high, what would it look like to you? Give me the full overview rather than what's just in front of you at the moment. So they lift up their eyes to the heavens and change their attitude about New York City. And one of the challenges with gratitude is that a lot of people have been taught, be grateful for all things. And in fact, in the Dark Ages, the oligarchs were concerned that the people were going to revolt, show up at the door with pitchforks. And so they actually paid off the clergy in the Dark Ages, of what was, has now become the Catholic Church, to teach people it's all right to be poor. It's all right, you'll receive your reward in heaven afterwards, to just kind of take that energy out of the inequality that was there. And then, of course, that filtered into Catholicism and then into evangelicalism. And so there are a lot of people that have lived their life that way. And frankly, a lot of them have lived their life pretty successfully, pretty abundantly. So I'm not saying that you don't have to do it the Unity way, but I found in my life it made a big difference to recognize, no, it's not that all, and you hear it's all good. No, it's not all good. But the good news is, if you're consciously connected to Spirit, you can see the good in all things. You can dissolve the negativity in your life and have positivity. So, what area of your life do you have a challenge in? Is it your health? Do you have a challenge in your relationships, whether they're intimate relationships or maybe a working relationship? Do you have challenges in your occupation? Do you enjoy doing what you do every day? What about your financial supply? Do you have enough? Uh, when Carl and I were traveling doing the prosperity seminars in the 90s, I'd say, okay, all my debts paid in full, all my needs met, all my obligations fulfilled, and all my desires demonstrated. You have enough to spare and to share. You should have enough to be able to have all of your basic needs taken care of, and then, yeah, do the things that you dream about doing, have your desires fulfilled. I want to talk for a moment about spiritual substance. It's a unity concept, and it's interesting because over these last 100 years or so, since Charles and Myrtle started teaching these things, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, our founders, one of the things that Charles would talk about was spiritual substance, how there's this underlying invisible energy that forms all things. And here we are in 2017, and quantum physics teaches us that we're all made of the same basic stuff. These little particles form and gel into things. Whether it's this pew or whether it's you. We're all basically made of the substance that underlies all things. So if we're aware that the substance is there, we can start appropriating it with our minds, and then it will form into things. There are a lot of Bible stories to this effect. There appears to be just lack or desolation. But then we learn that no, we can be supplied with whatever we need. The manna in the desert, they're wandering in the desert. But probably the most famous story is the feeding of the 5,000. Now, the interesting thing is we have 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which tell you the stories of Jesus' life. And it's very rare to find the same story in all 4 of them. And this story is indeed in all 4 of them. So I'm going to go with the Gospel of Luke. Got my pages mixed up a little bit here. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. The Gospel of Luke, 9th chapter, 12th verse. Now the day was ending, and the 12 came to Jesus and said, "Send the crowd away." They has to go into the surrounding villages to find lodging and to get something to eat. For here we are, see Jesus, in a desolate place. And Jesus said to them, "No, you give them something to eat." And they said, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish. Unless perhaps we go and buy food for all of these people." See, they're getting snarky, And then it says, there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, "Have them all sit down to eat in groups of about 50. They did so, and they all sat down. Then Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them, and he broke the bread, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before the people. And they all ate, and were satisfied, and the broken pieces which they had left over were picked up. 12 baskets full. As I was growing up, Catholic in Chicago, talk about this great miracle about how Jesus did this. But in unity, we believe that all narrative stories have an underlying symbolism. We call it metaphysical symbolism. And when we understand the symbolism, we find that this is a spiritual lesson that you and I can go out and do this afternoon. So let's go over what each of these elements means and then tie it all together. Many people I've heard speculate about what happened here. There was a Bible scholar named George Lamza, who said, everybody always carried food with them back in those days, so they just hid it underneath their cloak. So people saw Jesus take out his food, and they all take out their food, and it was a miracle. But it's not what the text says. In fact, here the disciples are saying, well, wait a minute, these people don't have food, and all that. So let's go over it. All characters in the Bible are aspects of us. So when you see someone doing something in the Bible, it's just ourselves and how we are reacting to a situation, or an aspect of how we react to our situation. And 2 of the aspects, of course, are our thinking nature and our feeling nature. All men, or all male characters, represent our thinking nature. And all females represent our emotional nature. Sorry, ladies, it's a stereotype, yes, but this helps you understand the stories, at least in the Bible. Now, this happened near the town of Bethesda, or Bethsaida. And that's a fishing town on the Sea of Galilee. And whenever you are in a fishing area, you're open to new ideas. Now, these disciples said, hey, this is a desolate place. When you see something like that, it says, Some place that appears to have absolutely no productivity or usefulness. Have you had that situation in your life? You have the day where you look out and you see absolutely no productivity or usefulness? Jesus represents the Christ consciousness in each of us facing the challenges in our life. Jesus' hands is the working power of this consciousness in our world. And it's mentioned that he looked up to heaven. What he did is he looked away from the appearance of desolation to the spiritual truth of the situation that God provides in all circumstances. Fish, whenever you see a fish mentioned in the Bible, it means an idea. We've all had that experience. I know Carla and I, we were over at the Tahitian Inn where we're staying, and outside the cafe they got a koi pond, and of course the fish come up. But like on the ocean and in the lakes, you'll be maybe standing there near the edge, and all of a sudden you'll see a fish surface and then go away. And think about how that's so similar to the way our thoughts happen. Suddenly a thought will surface. And I don't know about you, but as I get older, I find they surface. I better catch them now because it's going to go away forever, and I'm never going to see it again. Now, bread represents this spiritual substance I've been talking about. So substance ready to be demonstrated in the world. Now, 5, whenever you see the word 5, the 5 stones that David used to slay Goliath, it means our 5 senses, the things that we need taken care of in the physical world. 2, we have 2 fish. Polarized energy in the world. The fact that living in this physical space, there is here, there is there. There's hot, there's cold, there's up, there's down. Now, when we start combining these numbers, like he says, okay, that we see 5,000 men. Whenever you add a 0 to a number, it means applying this situation for as long as it takes to make it right. So the 5,000 men mean that those 5,000 thoughts that you have about the world, those scattered thoughts that you have, are in a desolate place, but you're about to be taken care of. And then he had them sit down in groups of 50. These all were Jews. They loved to tell us the same story over and over again and be redundant about stuff. And then the disciples are our 12 powers, and I understand you've been exploring the 12 powers here, one each month this year, so you get a sense of those. And again, the 12 disciples are all part of us. When you have doubting Thomas, or you have Peter denying his faith, that happens within us too. There are days where it just doesn't seem to be coming together. So, we tie this all together. We realize all of the characters are within us. There are times when we find ourselves in a desolate place, and we would love to just send away the challenges into the surrounding villages for lodging and food. Just get this stuff out of my face, please. But the divine presence within us reminds us, hey, you've got everything you need. What have you got? Use what you got. And then Jesus took what they had, 2 fish and substance. He combined the ideas with the substance of the universe to create. He blessed it. He blessed it so that it would multiply. Then you can meet the needs of all of our 5 senses, whatever's up for you. And here I mentioned the 5 areas of our life: health, occupation, relationships, spiritual growth, and financial supply. That's another 5. And at the end, it says they always have enough in reserve. There are 12 baskets full. Where did the 12? And here again, the 12 disciples. All of the things, all the aspects of ourselves can be taken care of. Now let's touch on the fact that he blessed what he had. Blessing. I grew up, like I said, in Chicago as a kid thinking that I had to go to a priest for a blessing. But everyone in this room can bless. And blessing is just shifting your energy to conferring prosperity upon something, saying, we're bigger than this. We can handle this. You're focusing on what it is you want to see expand, or what you want to see grow. So I would love to have all of you, at least one point today, after you leave the premises, find something or someone or something to bless, to confer prosperity on it, to shift the attitude, or to shift the situation. So the blessing may not change others, but it will change us. because we do interact with each other. In fact, I believe that we're all put on the earth here together because each of us has these unworthiness issues. And yet I find I encounter so many people, and I'm so blessed to be living in the same house with someone who can see the best in me and bring out the best in me. So bless other people by seeing the best in them. George Bernard Shaw is a journalist and playwright. He lived from 1856 to 1950. He says, God has given us a world that nothing but our own folly keeps us from being a paradise. Our world always has potential for us. And in this Bible story I just read, the 5,000 were fed, and yet so many people try to explain it away. And that's the beauty of the way it is in this physical world. God just doesn't suddenly drop a basket of cash at your doorstep when you need it. But there'll be a coincidence. You'll get unexpected income. Or like the gentleman I mentioned before, given 6 months to live. Here he is living 10 years later. There will be a coincidence. There are no coincidences. It's spirits in motion that'll come. And isn't it interesting that I needed cash and just now I got some unexpected income? The Gospel of John, 10th chapter, 10th verse, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Things were not easy in the times of Jesus. So he'd tell people, it's like, it's okay. You should have an abundant life. You should have your needs met. In 1936, in the midst of the Great Depression, one of our co-founders, Charles Filmer, actually sat down and wrote a book. Most of his books are actually compilations of lessons or sermons that he gave. But he wrote a book titled Prosperity. On page 24, he writes, God is the source of a mighty stream of substance, and you are a tributary of that stream. You're a channel of its expression. Blessing substance increases its flow. I'll repeat that. Blessing substance increases its flow. If your money supply is low or your purse seems empty, take it in your hands and bless it. See it filled with the living substance ready to become manifest. As you prepare your meals, bless the food and with the thought of spiritual substance. When you get dressed, bless your garments and realize that you are constantly clothed in elements of God's divine substance. The more conscious you become of the presence of the living substance, the more it will manifest itself for you, and the richer will be common good of all. Identify yourself with divine substance until you make it your own. It'll change your finances, destroy your fears, stop your worries, and soon begin to rejoice in the ever-present bounty of God. So go up to a higher place when you have a challenge in your life. See how a grateful mind becomes a great mind. And in this week of Thanksgiving, I want you to truly ponder and think about the difference between giving thanks for and giving thanks in all circumstances. Now, each week, I usually come up with this week's takeaways, and I often print them in the bulletin too, but this will give you a chance to, this is the stuff to just ponder this week, all right? Number one, give thanks in all things. Number two, go up to a higher place. Number three, divine ideas and divine substance combined can create an experience in our world. Bless what we have. Work with what you got. And then, of course, the grateful becomes great. Now, usually I like to do a closing story, but often I'll use a video instead. So we're going to close with a video story. It's 3 minutes long, a video, and see what you think.
Whether you believe in Santa Claus or God or fate, no matter what you believe, you're not going to believe what happened in Reading, Pennsylvania.
All right, let's go.
It began like all the other times. Every year I go out with Secret Santa, an anonymous businessman who travels the country at Christmas time, randomly going up to people in bus stations and thrift stores and handing out $100 bills.
Are you lying?
No, it's true.
Oh my God, this is crazy!
Although the reactions are priceless. Every year he spends sometimes more than $100,000 of his own money on this.
Here's $100.
And one thing I've always wondered is it really worth it?
You don't know what these people are going to do with this money. Do you care?
No, because one of the things that I do is I do not judge.
Good thing, because separating the naughty from nice
And this is for you.
is definitely not his forte.
I didn't earn that, though.
You did earn it, because I can tell you're a good man.
A good man?
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard that?
Maybe, like, my mom.
30-year-old Thomas Coates is a total deadbeat, at least by most accounts, including his own.
I wish I was special.
Addicted to heroin, he recently hocked his own son's toys for drug money. That's how bad it is.
I haven't worked in over a year, you know. I spent so much time in and out of treatment facilities.
Why his girlfriend hasn't left him and taken their son is a mystery, even to her.
Grab your bag.
But she is now running out of patience, which is why, the night before we met him, during yet another one of their many money fights, she suggested he try something radical.
She said, maybe you can shoot a prayer up to God real quick, you know. I know, you don't really believe in him, but maybe you can start.
And so he did pray, for the first time since childhood.
Take it, it's for you. Take it, take it.
Then, out of the blue, this saint shows up, slipping hundreds into his hand. You could almost see the wheels turning. That kind of kindness from a total stranger the day after he prayed.
You're my man. See you, pal.
It was too much of a coincidence for this atheist to bear.
It's amazing.
That to me was a miracle. That was God saying, all right, you had enough now. I'm gonna show you something. So from here on out, it's up to me.
After meeting Secret Santa, Thomas checked himself into a treatment facility. And although he's done it before, he says this will be the first time with a higher power at the helm.
Maybe that gave him the hope that he needs to break his addiction. And maybe that'll be the turning point that'll change his life, and maybe he won't go back. Now, wouldn't that be worth it?
Every penny. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Reading, Pennsylvania.
In the New Testament, the first letter to the Thessalonians, 5th chapter, 18th verse. See that none of you repays evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to all. Rejoice always. Pray constantly. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God for you. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace.